Hey, are you on for anything else? I want somebody to kind of be aware. Yes. Okay. Appreciate you being there. Well, encouraging for Nicole and Ellie, like I told, I couldn't do it.
I told her, you know, that's where I wanted to be. Right?
Yep. I appreciate it, brother.
I'll get the hang of this by the end of the quarter, pushing the microphone. After teaching the kids up there for so long without a microphone, I just wasn't used to it. Okay, so we are in 2 Corinthians 12 once again. And we kind of covered the first part, talking about what Paul experienced in his visions, as well as talked a little bit about what's called his thorn in the flesh. We're going to pick up with that discussion in just a minute here. I'm going to start with a prayer. We'll quickly do our review pages just to make sure we're good, so the kids, they can see that we know our memory stuff too. And then we'll get into the questions. Father in heaven, thank you for today. We understand that this world is a wonderful place, but it's also a world that has been marred by sin. There are pains and sorrows, thorns and thistles, things that cause us distress. We ask that as we study the book of 2 Corinthians, we will learn the secrets of being content, to behave like Paul does in whatever circumstances we are, to be content with weaknesses and with knowing that your power is enough. It's in your Son's holy name we pray. Amen. All right. So we will start with our scenes here. Chapter 1, what title are we giving this one? Comfort. Chapter 2, church discipline or discipline. Chapter 3, okay. Chapter 4, eternal perspective. Not the stairway to heaven. Someone's going to say that, you know. Chapter 5, a new body. Chapter 6, a relationship with unbelievers or being unequally yoked, right? Chapter 7, repentance. Chapter 8, giving self to the Lord, like Macedonians, right? Chapter 9, bountiful giving. Chapter 10, Christian warfare. Chapter 11, Paul's trials. You guys know this stuff. Chapter 12, thorn in the flesh. And chapter 13, examine yourself. You know, repetition plus audiovisuals. I think that is really the key, right? And I need to be more mindful of that in our classes and our sermons, because I think we learn like kids do, but sometimes we sit up here and lecture, and I don't know, I don't learn well in a lecture. And so I want a class to be something interactive, and I'll try to remember the visual part of it. Maybe that'll help you guys as much as it does me. But so we are talking about thorn in the flesh today. I want to talk about something I didn't talk too much about last time. But what is the importance of asking, even if we know that God might actually say no? And there's a pretty good chance God might say it. Because Jesus, he knew what was going to happen, right? He knew what was going to happen on the cross, and yet he still prayed 3 different times, Father, you know, let this cup pass through me, but not my will, but your will be done. And Paul, he has this thorn in the flesh. It seems pretty inevitable, but he implores the Lord. He begs the Lord 3 times. So if God's just going to say no, why is prayer so important? Laura, first. Should be on.
I was thinking about that while you were saying that, and I think it's to just show your reliance on God and what His will is, and showing that you trust Him.
Yeah, good. Any other thoughts on that? Bruce, and then Tom. Oh, and then Harvey, I guess so.
Prayer,
Bruce first.
prayer connects us with God, and that's what we want to always be, just connected with Him.
Good. I like it. Tom?
I think when we pray, we can actually appreciate God's perspective on things.
Good. Harvey?
And also, God has changed His mind on things that are going to happen, like Nineveh, and then He relented on punishment sometimes to the children of Israel. So, it's up to Him what He wants to do. He is the deciding factor.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. God can and has changed his mind even in unexpected circumstances like Nineveh, right? And there's no other explanation except for he responded well to prayer. Eric and then Bruce.
God also knows how things play out a lot farther ahead. So the no that you get might be what you really want. You just don't get it yet.
Yeah, something better is along later. You just don't know it because that's what you see in your vision. Good. Go ahead.
A gentle correction.
Yes. Yeah.
God doesn't change or change his mind. He has multiple options at all times, and he can choose according to the way people respond to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to keep the details out of it because I don't want anyone talking to Riker about it and being embarrassed. But last night, he said, Dad, can I talk to you about something? And he approached me about one of our family rules and wanted an exception. He wanted to change something. He was really, really respectful about it. He told me why. And he knew I was probably going to say no. And I said, I'm just very thankful that you didn't whine at me, you didn't cry at me, you didn't get mad at me. I said, I'm gonna take what you said to your mom, and we're gonna talk about this. And I said, you're probably gonna get a no, but we're gonna talk about this. This is what got me thinking about it. And we found another alternative. We found something else that worked out well, and he's okay with it. But he knew we weren't gonna change our minds, but there was something different coming. I really think there is something to a relationship where you can ask and talk. And we want that with our kids and our parents. We want that kind of relationship where we can talk, even if the answer is going to be no. We want to have that open dialogue. Husbands and wives, sometimes, we have to have those conversations. We have to communicate. That's part of love, right? And so I don't think it was a bad thing that Paul kept asking, but he did eventually get a very clear no. But that relationship is important, right? Maverick?
I think just selfishly, it helps us maybe accept the situation too. We can put that burden onto God, and we've put it before Him. And I don't like that. We've done all we can do now is pray, but I don't like that. But we've done all that we can do. We've prayed about it. We've given it to Him, and maybe that'll help us accept whatever the answer is, whatever it is.
Yeah, we did our part. It's up to God to do or not do His part, right? Rick, and then Larry.
I think there's a lot of times there are times when we can be tempted to simply not bring things to God at all. And I don't think that's ever what He wants. No matter what it is, I think the scriptures make it clear He wants us bringing those things to Him. You delighted in the fact that your son came to you and was respectful, and that he wanted a dialogue with you. And even though you said, well, this probably isn't the best thing, but you connected in that. And that's what our Father wants. He's a relational God. And the fact that we so oftentimes don't even bother to bring things to Him, well, I just figure, no, don't think that way. Bring it to Him because He wants to hear from you, because He deserves to hear from you. And like all the other things have said, we never know, like the situation with Nineveh, when He may, in fact, change His mind. But we want to do things that make Him happy. And even if He's going to tell me no, if it makes Him happy that I bring it to Him, I should do it anyways.
Yeah, I'm convinced that sometimes our human relationships are there mainly to teach us about God, right? And how much we learn. Go ahead, Larry.
Sometimes we can change God's mind, actually, like Moses did. He was going to destroy all the people who came out of Egypt because he just got tired of it. But Moses talked to God and changed his mind, so he didn't destroy them all, because he would look bad. He brought them all out of Egypt just so you can kill them, and God changed his mind.
Yeah.
And God also wants us to communicate with us. That's why He made man the first time in Garden of Eden. He walked with Adam and Eve, talk, and we read about talking and as they walk in the garden and things. Communication. He wants that relationship.
Yeah. So
prayer is our way of talking to God, and He likes that. And we should always want to be talking to God.
Absolutely. So I'm glad we had this discussion. I wanted to bring that out. We kind of didn't get a chance to fully talk about this idea on Sunday. There is a contentment that comes through prayer, a regular prayer life. The contentment that comes here to be content with our weaknesses, because that's what we kind of ended on last time. I'll be honest, I'm not content with pain. I'm not content when I hurt. I'm not content when I'm sick. Not generally so. I want to be better. I want to get past this. I want to get through it. But learning a contentment with, okay, whatever God decides, I'm okay with that. That's really powerful in our faith to get to that point. When he says in here, this is verse 10 of 2 Corinthians chapter 12, therefore I'm well content with weaknesses, insults, distresses, persecutions, difficulties, for Christ's sake, for when I am weak, then I am strong. I'm not strong because I'm so strong. I'm strong because he has empowered me. And when I am weak, I let him do the walking and talking for me, right? And I follow his way. And sometimes you got to do some really hard stuff. And you say, I'm not strong enough. Well, maybe you're not. But it's not about you and your strength, right? This is about God and his strength. And I think we're just too used to relying on ourselves instead of God sometimes. And that really is the secret to contentment. At the end of Philippians chapter 4, he talks about being content not just in persecution, but also with physical hunger and thirst. And like, how do we get contentment no matter what? You know, that abused verse, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, wasn't about, hey, I can do like superhero thing, you know, literally whatever I put my mind to as long as he's with me. No, but it's saying I can get through anything. I can be content in any circumstances because he's with me and I know it. And that's a powerful mindset changer. And sometimes it's all you have to hold on to, right? Because your situation, maybe physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, is stripped down to nothing. And you're like, I'm helpless. And once you are, those moments are when you say, God, I'm yours. And we all need some of those moments. I'm not asking for you to have it. I don't wish for you to have it. But there are times that I think God sees fit to allow us to undergo those times. So we remind ourselves who's really in charge, right? Rick?
The phrase there in verse 10, for the sake of Christ, that is immensely powerful when applied to our lives. When our motivation is for his sake. There have been times in my life when my motivation is because I have to. And there's good in having a sense of duty, don't get me wrong, but I think first, for the sake of Christ, Paul is tapping into the fact that I want to do this for him. And for, at least for my life, when the pleasing God is my motivation, I have not encountered something that I haven't been able to accomplish. That's not always my motivation, however, which is why I fail. But when that is my motivation, it's I don't even know what to describe other than just a super burst of purpose and joy and all the things that we know we have to tap into to be successful at any sort of endeavor. If I'm doing this for Jesus, it is the greatest motivator, even beyond the carrot of, well, I want to be pearly gates and streets of gold. I mean, we understand the beauties of eternity that we can't understand, but it's always been about him and being with him and loving him and being loved by him. That is the motivator that will overcome all obstacles.
And we can get it, right? Have you ever done something you would never do otherwise for someone you love? Something disgusting, something uncomfortable, unpleasant. And it's pretty easy to point to examples as a parent, right? Some of the things that have happened at 2 a.m. with my children that I've cleaned up and dealt with. Just some random stranger, I don't know. Like, maybe if I was getting paid, but there's some things that I've done, and I really wouldn't want to do for anybody, but for the people I love and care about, I'm willing to go through hard stuff, right? And so if this is a relational God, and we have a relationship with Jesus for his sake, to please him, I think you're right on, and really all the comments have been right on spot with this. There's some things we're willing to go through if it's worth it. If we're convinced serving Christ is worth it, then we're going to do a lot of hard things to be willing to undergo. In this case, this is not just random trouble. This is trouble because he's a Christian. And if you stand up and do the right thing and suffer for it, what gets you through is it's the right thing to do. And I know it, and I believe it, and I believe in him, and he'll see me through. Now, the Bible does talk about sometimes we suffer things that are our own fault because we've done some things that are bad. That's not an honorable thing. I mean, that's part of life. You deal with it. This right here, I'm suffering for Christ's sake, for the sake of the kingdom, so his word can spread. And the way you bear up under suffering says a lot to your enemy, to the world. Think on the cross. Even a Roman centurion standing there noticed how Jesus bore up under suffering. Pilate noticed how he was on trial. Think about how the apostles suffered and how people pointed out and looked at that and took great courage from it. When the apostles got beat up, what happened? The kingdom spread. Why? Because the way that they bore up under suffering, they were convinced. They were convinced it was worth it. Good? Good. Sometimes I don't like those pesky chapter divisions, right? Chapter 13 really fits well with chapter 12, and look forward to trying to tie those things together. Good. Let's read the next little section here. So really, I think we did end with 10 the last time we read, so I'm going to pick up reading in verse 11. I become foolish, you yourselves compelled me. Actually, I should have been commended by you. For in no respect was I inferior to the most eminent apostles, even though I am a nobody. The signs of a true apostle were performed among you with all perseverance, by signs, wonders, and miracles. For in what respect were you treated as inferior to the rest of the churches, except that I myself did not become a burden to you? Forgive me this wrong. So they're dripping with sarcasm. I don't know if I read it the right way. But there is an interesting thing he's talking about in here. First of all, who was he equal with, on par with? Yeah, the most eminent apostles, right? Which you might think the big name guys. Most people don't think like Bartholomew. Yes, Bartholomew was important, but we don't usually talk about him as being the pillar of the church, right? You got like Peter and Andrew and James and John, like these guys that, and James the Lord's brother, pillars of the church. He's like, I'm on par with those guys. But then he turns around and calls himself a nobody. I'm a nobody to you. What is he doing? Why does he call himself a nobody in this passage? Go ahead, Bruce.
Sometimes by pointing out a contrast brings out the importance of what is being said.
Yeah. So for them, they've kind of put him on a different level. You know, we have these super apostles, these great apostles. We have the apostles that are well-known, famous. And then Paul's the one they're ragging on. And they have trouble with Paul, things they don't like about Paul. And he's like, you know, technically I am as important as those guys, but yeah, I'm a nobody. But what was it that he came with? What was it that he had that made them believe in the first place? He says in this text there's something important. Because if he was a nobody, why did they even believe him? Because he wasn't really a nobody, by the way. Go ahead, Rick.
The signs of an apostle, the signs and wonders, the supernatural ability that the Holy Spirit gave to those specific sent forth ones we call apostles.
Yeah. So back in the day, before the whole New Testament was written down in the form that we know, how are you going to know if someone really is from God or not? They have the ability to do miracles. They've had, you know, various different teachers, had people lay their hands on them. The apostles had passed on that ability. But the apostles themselves were on another level, right? There's places in Acts where it says they were hoping to hand a handkerchief to one of the apostles and they bring it back home to their sick relative and the sick relative will get better. Or they'd be walking down the street and like throw their crippled relative into your shadow, and if Peter's shadow crosses over you, then you'd be healed all of a sudden. Like, this was another level, right? And he's like, when I was there, like, you thought of me pretty highly. I wasn't a nobody when I was there. I lived there for how long, by the way? Year and a half, right? Year and 6 months he lived with the Corinthians. They knew him. But now these other guys came along, the super apostles, and they said, listen to us. Paul's just in it for the fame and the glory and the fortune. Paul is in it for all these other reasons. He just doesn't want to tell you the truth. Listen to us. We're so important. And he says, the only thing that separates me from them is I haven't taken a salary. Is that my crime? which the funny thing is that should make him more endearing. If a preacher came along and says, I literally want none of your money, I'm just here to tell you the truth. That's all I want to do. Like, you should trust him even more, is what he's saying. But yet they're ragging on him because they're listening to these other guys, these other dissenting voices that want to be heard. And instead of building up the kingdom, they're trying to tear down other servants of the kingdom. Which this is dangerous. This is the only reason I believe that Paul had to have this whole section in here. It's because of the damage these guys were doing. He felt like, I have to address it, right? Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, Paul does a lot of self-deprecation throughout his letters. He talks about himself. In a sense, an apostle is just simply a messenger who is sent out. So his greatness stems from who he was representing. He's representing the Lord. But, in other places, in 1 Corinthians, he said, we, the apostles, we're the offscouring, we're the filth, the trash. We're mistreated and we're nothing. In that sense, yes, but his greatness comes from who he represents and his fidelity to that.
Yeah. This really exposes kind of a danger. Whenever we get too caught up in the messenger rather than the message, and this is a problem, by the way, in 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and probably most of the New Testament letters, right? When people, instead of listening to what Paul said and searching the scriptures to see if it was true, they bashed Paul. Or they competed with Paul. Or they tried to say, follow me and you follow him and we'll do our own thing. This is very important, and I think it's something that I don't know if I focus on enough. Let me give an example. Like sometimes I used to get together with groups of preachers from they gather from the whole area, and then they'd all sit here and talk about which preacher has gone off into error and holds that weird position and that weird position. And the conversation, and by the way, I think there is some value in, a new position has been spreading between churches. Leadership should know what's going on. We should be prepared for handling that error, right? But is it really our job to sit here and police people? Is it our job to compete with others? Hey, this person does meetings everywhere, and man, they're kind of a weak teacher. We should do more meetings with this guy over here. Like, that whole mindset where we're almost competing with the best messengers starts to detract from what's really important. And there's a humility that comes from Paul here that I think is super genuine. He says, all I've ever wanted to do is tell you the truth. All I've ever wanted to do was have you listen when I talk about Jesus. And then you change your lives. And you've done it. You've done a lot of good things. But he's worried that they're going to get so caught up in the politics of people that they move on from the message of Christ. And as a church, we would do well to be separated as much as we can from the politics of other churches, because it's not our business, and in fact, it will only bring us harm. Like I said, I think the leadership needs to know what positions are out there. We need to know what kind of troubles are going around. That's watching out for your flock. But it's also not our shepherd's job and our preacher's job to go police the whole church universal, right? Because they know this flock, and that's enough trouble of their own. We could be kind of troublesome sometimes, right? They got us. Let's let those elders handle those churches. There may come times we have to handle some things inter-church or whatever, but by and large, the pattern is let's just talk about the truth. And the Corinthians had enough to worry about. But here they are playing politics, and they don't want to listen to Paul. And Paul says, sure, I'm a nobody. But that's not true. There's another analogy. I want to read the rest of this chapter because I think the other analogy helps us understand this as well. Verse 14. Here for this third time I'm ready to come to you. I will not be a burden to you. I do not seek what's yours. But you, for children, are not responsible to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. I will most gladly spend and be expended for your souls. If I love you more, am I to be loved less? But be that as it may, I did not burden you myself. Nevertheless, crafty fellow that I am, I took you in by deceit. Certainly I have not taken advantage of you through any of those whom I've sent to you, have I? So we'll stop there for a second. We'll talk about the rest of the chapter in a bit. So what relationship does he compare apostle to Christian? What does he use to compare it? Parents and children, right? Can children sometimes be ungrateful? What is it that leads a child to be ungrateful for the work of their parents or the sacrifice of their parents? You can speak as a parent or a child here. Maybe a recovered child who learned how much you appreciated your parents, or maybe one who's been underappreciated by your kids. What is it that causes the disconnect sometimes? Yeah, they don't get what they want or when they want, right? Their will is not met. Sometimes they don't know the full picture, right? They don't know the family's financial picture. They just know my friend has these shoes and I want those shoes, and I'm the only kid without those shoes, and why don't I have them? This day it's even weirder things like a water bottle. You know, I don't know if that's still a thing, but for a while there, I got to have this fancy water bottle, and they started, making the water bottles people used to bring to the work site, made them pink now, and the girls want them too. But if you don't have the fancy one because you don't want the off-brand one, then you don't, You see, they don't have the full picture sometimes of what is a fad, what is a trend, what's healthy, what's unhealthy. They don't understand maybe the value of bedtimes or limiting your money and spending. There are a lot of unknowns for children that the parents, they know the big picture. And so I think there's that ignorance that sometimes causes ungratefulness too. Rick, did you have your hand up?
Immaturity. I was thinking about how there are many things that when I was a kid that I got upset about or was angry about with my parents. But then I got old enough to where I didn't even have to bring that up when I was an adult and say, you remember when you did this? And now I understand that it's just, I can look back and see the whole picture now that maturity hopefully gives me to say, I get why they said no to things. It doesn't have to be any one thing in particular. And these brothers and sisters have to get to a stage in their maturity where they can look at Paul, ultimately at God, and say, you don't have to explain yourself to me every single time just because now I'm much more mature. Maturity also understands that not everything needs an explanation, but that there is a good reason based on the people and the knowledge that they had at that particular point in time. And especially when it comes to God, I mean, he's not going to make a mistake. But immaturity still wants to know why, demands why, and maturity comes to a point and says, I don't have to have all those answers. I recognize you know more than I do. You did then, you do now, and that's the kind of thing that Paul should have been able to expect.
Sure. And I'll say, it is kind of a natural process for children to challenge authority. Now, and there are times that pushback can actually be useful to sharpen us as parents if it's done in the right way. So it's not that everyone's just automatically evil when they do that, but there is an immaturity, like we've been saying, to not knowing the full picture. Now, it is interesting what he says here. He's like, don't worry, I'm coming to you again, and I'm not coming for what's yours, right? He's like, for the third time, I'm coming, not taking a salary, which, by the way, I've already extensively written about, I have the right to do. I'm coming to you, and I'm not expecting a single dime from you, or drachma, or whatever they use, right? I'm coming on my own expense because I love you. And he says it's the parents' job to save up for the kids, not the kids to save up for the parents. That's not a universal value, but it was in Western culture, and I think still in American culture, right? Parents always want to do best for what's best for my kids, and give them a better life than I had, give them the resources that I didn't have, make sure they struggle less than I did, things like that, right? We have that mentality, and that feels like the natural order. I'm supposed to care for them instead of them caring for me. And so Paul doesn't mind it. But it's draining to be a parent. It is. It's draining to be a caretaker when someone relies on you. Paul was drained. He had the constant care for all the churches on him, right? Last chapter. But he says, I do it because I love you, right? I'm your parent. I had this relationship. Many of them probably were taught the gospel and grew in their faith because of the teaching of Paul when he was there. It wasn't like Corinth just had ready-made apostles everywhere. There was a couple of successes in the synagogue, but they got kicked out. So a lot of the success was in the Gentile world, brand new Christians from scratch. They owed their souls to Paul. And he says, I'm not here for the money. I'm here for you guys. So he even specifies, I didn't even send any of my workers to you for anything. We're going to learn more about some of the ones he sent, but, he leaves Titus there and whoever this other guy that's traveling with him. Apollos was there at one time. He's like, did they ever rip you off? Were they here for money? No, my people that I sent, they believed the way I did. We're here for your spiritual good. And I don't know, Paul doesn't really even have to defend himself. His works defend themselves. But for their sake, he does step in. Do you guys have any other thoughts on kind of what Paul's arguing between here, verses 11 through 18? Anything he mentions? Anything you want to bring out? I really like verse 15. I think if you were to ask our shepherds here if that's how they felt, I think they would say so. I don't think they would have taken the job. It didn't come with a salary increase, right? He says, I will most gladly spend and be expended for your souls. If I love you more, am I to be loved less? You do it out of love. And if you're serving as a shepherd or a deacon or a teacher or a Bible class teacher for anything but love, you're doing it for the wrong reason, right? And it is exhausting. You are giving of yourself. You're pouring out some of your own energy, your time, your efforts, your mental abilities. And you feel less because of it, like you're just worn out, you're tired. And it's hard to even describe the mental tired that comes from being a teacher to very immature students. I don't know how elementary teachers do what they do, right? Immature students, they're probably all going crazy here at this last 3 weeks of school. Like, it's draining. But I don't think they're doing it for the pay either, right? Like, teachers don't do it for the pay. They're not supposed to be. Good teachers do it for love. And so he's using more of that sarcasm, which I'm not saying you need to use sarcasm often, but there are times that Paul says there might be some uses of this if you're going to get their attention. Like, I'm so sneaky, I got you by the seat, by not taking money when I could have. Like, what really was my plan here is what he's saying, right? Yeah, if I was a sneaky guy, I would have had a bunch of money and run. I would have, started a cult or something. Like, if he really was in control in the way that they're thinking and such a bad guy, then, sometimes people have a way of revisionist history. I've seen this happen when somebody has some kind of a struggle and then they don't like that other people are telling them, you're going down a bad path. And then suddenly, no one's ever been there for me. You're always out to get me. Everyone groups up against me. And they forget literal years of help they've received. I see this a lot, by the way. They only react to the here and now. That's immaturity again, by the way. Man, everyone's out to get me. Everyone's talking against me. No one's on my side. No, your whole life, the years before, they were on your side. They didn't deceive you and trick you into becoming a Christian. This is something you chose, hopefully. And so Paul's saying, just listen back to what the truth was. This is probably less than 10 years from maybe, right around that time that he had been there for the first time. Any other thoughts up to then? All right. Let's finish the chapter, and then we'll officially ask question 5. I don't think I officially asked it, even though I've talked through it. Verse 18. I urged Titus to go, and I sent the brother with him. Titus did not take advantage of you, did he? Did we not conduct ourselves in the same spirit and walk in the same steps? All this time you've been thinking we are defending ourselves to you. Actually, it is in the sight of God that we have been speaking in Christ, and all for your upbuilding, beloved. For I am afraid that perhaps when I come I may find you to be not what I wish, may be found by you to be not what you wish, and perhaps there'll be strife, jealousy, angry tempers, disputes, slanders, gossip, arrogance, disturbances. I am afraid that when I come again, my God may humiliate me before you, and I may mourn over many of those who have sinned in the past and not repented of the impurity, immorality, and sensuality which they have practiced. All right, so first of all, Titus, this unnamed famous brother, who may or may not be Apollos, what was it like when they came? Just from implication of what Paul's saying here. Was it good or bad when they came? Good, right? It was a good thing. And they brought back good news, and they had encouragement, and they said, hey, these guys are responding to the gospel. They're changing. And they didn't come for money. And they didn't say, send money to Paul. These guys were on the same page with Paul. But what was his reason for writing 2 Corinthians? You literally have people tell you 2 Corinthians was written to defend Paul's apostleship. And I can't even tell you how many commentaries in my office says that. He literally says, that's not why I'm writing. Which is funny, because you might get that impression. Why does Paul say he's writing his letter? And you can literally just read it out of there. It's to encourage, to build up, right? I like the word edify. An edifice, building something, a structure. So I want you to think back to the rest of this book, because I do think we have to kind of puzzle through this a bit. It may have seemed to be a personal defense in many sections of this. And there's some necessary defenses Paul's had to make so that they would listen to him and remember back to the relationship they had at the start. But what about this letter has been an encouragement? Because parts of it might seem almost the opposite, right? But what about this letter has been building them up or edifying them? What would you say? Go ahead, Rick. And then Tom.
Well, the simple fact that they did what they were supposed to as a church from what we call the First Corinthian letter, where he's rebuking them, telling them, you guys have got to correct this man and the sin he's in. And so the fact that they have done that, and Paul is so thrilled with that, I mean, he's just oozing with joy. That's a boost to know, hey, we can do this Christianity thing, and we can be a real church that belongs to Jesus. I would be very encouraged by that.
Good. Yeah, to tell them, you've changed, you've grown. Tom, did you have your hand up? Okay. Yeah, just to point that out, right? I think that's a powerful idea. When someone tells me I've done something right, because I've done a lot wrong, I've done a lot dumb, things that didn't help out. They always say, people talk about if you really want to know humility or something, then you were the one that held the flashlight for your dad or your grandpa, right? My grandpa was super handy. I was not. My dad wasn't really either. So yeah, I was sometimes the kid holding the flashlight and no, the other wrench. No, the other one. So I had to learn things the hard way. But when someone told me, hey, good job, that looks good. You did a really good job there. Which, by the way, should be a valuable, important part of your discipline with your kids. Discipline is not just, oh, you messed up, let me cause pain in some way or take something away and make you hurt. No. Discipline is all-inclusive. In fact, a lot of it should be praise. It's okay to say no. My sister taught at a preschool at Purdue's campus where they were not allowed to say anything negative. They couldn't say no. They couldn't say stop or don't. I'm not saying that. But to say, hey, I really like the way you shared that toy, or I really like the way you cleaned your room without me asking, or hey, good job, you're mowing the lines in the yard straight now. Like, telling people you did a good job is valuable. Shepherds, deacons, Bible class teachers, this is our stuff too. This is upbuilding. Hey, you messed up some things in the past, but you fixed it. I see progress. Think about where you were last year and now where you are now spiritually. Sharing those things is one of the biggest encouragements you can give, right? What else about this letter has been an encouragement? maybe even just think back to like our last couple of classes. Go ahead, Bruce. What?
I want a 20-year-old body.
Yeah. So we think about this body's wearing out, and he says, this is just the tent. You're getting the permanent dwelling, and it's going to be better than anything you can imagine. That is an encouragement, right? Yeah, there's some fear of the judgment if you're on the wrong side of it, but there is the eternal weight of glory waiting on you. Without the frailties and the feeble things, that's as encouraging as it can get, right? And even think how the letter started, right? You're sorrowful, but our God is a God of comfort, and He's going to comfort you so you can comfort other people. And you remember that brother that was walking in sin that you withdrew from? Well, he's back now, so let's accept him with open arms. And you know how some people are in darkness when it comes to reading the Old Testament? Well, you guys are Christians, so the veil's been lifted. You can see Jesus Christ bright and holy. I mean, go through the chapters and think about it from that way. From the, I heard it said the other day that what the optimist sees the glass half full, and the pessimist sees it half empty, but the psalmist sees it running over. The idea that a Christian can always find so many blessings that your cup runneth over. That idea that it's amazing if you really stop and think about it. Yeah, bad things have been going on, but I'm not dead yet. He didn't strike me down with lightning. He gave me a chance that I could turn this life around and I can do things for other people. Yes, I messed up, but now it's time to fix it, and good times are coming, whether it be here or, in the life to come. But that's a different perspective. Go ahead, Tom.
Another thing that strikes me in this letter is his encouragement in the greatness of giving. When you give, it sets off this chain reaction of praise toward God and thanksgiving to God and encouraging others by your giving for them to give and set off the whole chain over and over again. It seems perpetual.
Yeah, so in that, chapter 8 and 9, it's all about these positive encouragements about giving. But here's the thing. We have this weird thing that happens in our brain where if anybody has any criticism of us, suddenly that's all we can focus on, right? And I'm that way. You could layer on the praise, but you said I got something wrong? You said I messed up? You're against me. No. Like, he is telling them, this has been a letter that I'm trying to build you up with. I'm trying to strengthen you. But sometimes we don't see that. We look at this letter and we're like, man, Paul had a lot of bad things to say about those messed up Corinthians. But once you do what we're doing right now, and you uncover, this is a positive letter. It's got its sorrowful moments, but even though afflicted with thorns, you can get through it because He's with you. There's the positive side. But we've got to be willing to put in the work because, yeah, He's going to have a lot of praise for us, but He's also going to have some criticism. And we need to learn to take both. Some people don't take praise well. They're always down low and I'm a nobody. I'll never be anything. That's not good. But some people don't take any criticism at all. Don't criticize me. Don't tell me what to do. I know what I'm doing, right? We need to be balanced in that, okay, I don't get a big head about it, but hey, it feels good to know someone acknowledged I did something good. But realistically, sometimes I got to work on some stuff. And I need to be told, yeah, here's an area where I'm weak in. And it might even be a good question to ask somebody sometime. Someone that you see as a little bit more spiritually mature than you. Hey, do you think there's any areas you think I could work on in my faith? Anything you notice about that? And maybe even putting it that way. I want to get better. I don't want to coast. I don't want to stay where I am. Because you know what the Hebrew writer says? That's like drifting without an anchor. There's really no such thing as sitting still. In your faith, you're either pressing forward or you're backsliding. And hope and faith and trust and love, all these things are your anchor. And you've got to have that to be growing. So we're going to talk a little bit more about 19 through the end of the chapter, as well as introducing chapter 13 next class. But is there any other thoughts? Good. Yeah. Yeah, if Paul can go through what he did, imagine what we can accomplish. Good. Thanks, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. Gonna sing about sounds like there's some unhappy kids tonight. I don't know. Maybe we should sing. This will put them in a better mood. How shall the young secure their hearts? Number 32. Do me so. How shall the young secure their hearts and guard their lives from sin? Thy word the choicest rules impart to keep the conscience clean, to keep the conscience clean. 'Tis like the sun, a heavenly light that guides us all the day, and through the dangers of the night, a lamp to lead our way, a lamp to lead our way. Thy word is everlasting truth. How pure is every page. That holy book shall guide our youth and well support our age. And well support our age.
Tonight, as I was thinking about the invitation, I remembered reading something a long time ago that always haunted me. And it was, I think it was a billboard maybe on the road, and it says that the last time you did something and you didn't know it. And I was like, that kind of haunted me. And it made me think about the last time I spent the night at my grandparents'. I didn't know it was the last time. It just was. The last time I ate dinner with my one grandma, as she was still my grandma. I didn't know that because shortly after that, she got sick, wasn't in her right mind anymore, and then she died not too long after that. I didn't know it. Last time I mowed a family friend's lawn, who I used to mow her lawn every weekend when I was a kid, it was the last time I did that. I didn't know it. It's a little warmer. The last time I worked with my old work partner, who died of a heart failure a few months later. I didn't know that was the last time I was ever going to work with him. And then the one that kind of still sticks with me from a couple years ago is the last time I joked around with a work colleague who got killed in a car wreck the next day. I didn't know that was the last time I was going to joke around with him about stuff, because it was always kind of funny with us, because when Rachel was little, he had an older son, and he would joke around because he saw her flying a little helicopter thing. Like, he'd always joke, yeah, she's smart, like that, because of his son. It was just fun. But we joke around all the time, and he got killed in a terrible car accident the next day. And I didn't know that was the last time I would talk with him. And that reminded me, I guess, going back, it's kind of a short invitation, but James 4:13 and 14. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go in such a town and spend a year there and trade and make profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. So all those things in my mind, that this was the last time I did it, I didn't even realize it. And like I'm thinking right now, this might be the last time I talk to all of you tonight. That's the reality of it, and I won't know that until it's gone. And you guys won't know that until it's gone. And then it's kind of haunting, but that's what God is wanting us to understand, that you need to be right with Him, because you don't know the last time you're going to do anything. Based on this verse, you don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know what 10 minutes from now brings. And there's something that's going to be announced that is kind of tragic, that we didn't know that was going to happen. So tonight, if you're not right with God, think about that. And I think too, I guess going on, it goes on to my whole time thing. I think that verse, God, a year is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day to God, is not to teach us about how old the earth is and stuff like that. That's to teach us that our time here is super short compared to eternity. It's going to be over like that. And that we need to remember that we don't know what tomorrow brings, and that it's imperative that we're right with God. So that's the invitation. If you're not right with God, you don't know if you've got another chance. This might be the last time you spend with us tonight, and you don't even know it. None of us know that. So if you're not right with God and you're ready to make yourself right with God by confessing Jesus and being baptized into the body of Christ, we offer that now. Or if you want us to pray and help you make a sin right, because you may not get another opportunity to do that, and ask forgiveness from God, and we can help you with that tonight too. So if you need our help with any of these things, come forward now as we stand and sing.
How long has it been since you talked with the Lord and told him your heart's hidden secret? How long since you prayed? How long since you stayed on your knees till the light shone through? How long has it been since your mind felt at ease? How long since your heart knew no seeming burden? Can you call him your friend? How long has it been since you knew that he cared for you? How long has it been since you knelt by your bed and prayed to the Lord up in heaven? How long since you knew that he'd answer you and would keep you the long night through? How long has it been since you woke with the dawn and felt that the day's worth the living? Can you call him your friend? How long has it been since you knew that he cared for you? Thank you. You may be seated.